Good evening, everybody. It's Bart from GiantscaleNews.com, and I'm just doing a quick video for you showing how to drill accurate holes in wood. A lot of times you'll have an airplane, and whether it's balsa or plywood or maybe some spruce, you'll have to drill a hole. You want it to be exactly in the right spot, and you might try drilling it. Say it's a 1/4 inch hole, you'll grab a 1/4 inch drill bit, you'll try to drill it, and you'll find that the hole is actually off by maybe it could be a 1/16 of an inch off when you do it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the way to do this so that you get the hole exactly centered where you want it so that you can do more precise work. Now with balsa wood or like light plywood, say, with any material really, you're going to need to have a center point where you're going to start drilling your hole. With something like steel, aluminum, maybe a hardwood like maple, you'd want to do a center punch with a hammer and a tool like this, which is a center punch. And it's just a hardened steel point ground on the front of this tool so that when you hit something with it, it leaves a good mark. And then your drill bit would go into that mark, and that's where you would start your hole. But with softer woods, I like to use something like this, which is more like an awl or a scribing tool, and I'll just put it right exactly where the mark is. I'll push and then just work it a little bit, and I'll get my center mark that way. Okay, and then the trick to doing this is to not be in a rush. So let me get my drill bit to start. I thought I had it there, but I didn't. So what I would normally do is start with this size drill, and that's a 1/16 inch drill bit. And the trick to getting this this hole that we're going to drill in the firewall of our pits, PAU, Pitts Challenger, the trick is to go from a very small drill bit up to the size that you actually want. In this case it's going to be 1/4 inch, but you want to go from the starter drill bit to the size that you ultimately want the hole to be in as many steps really as you have patience for. With something like a plywood, you wouldn't want to go up in increments more than maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And what that does is it keeps the drill bit from being able to walk in one direction or the other. So you start with a small drill bit and you work it up to something a little bit bigger. And what this does is it sits in that first hole and it stays centered as it drills a bigger hole. So before we get started, let's just talk a little bit about the different options you would have for drilling holes in your project. The best case is always going to be to take the part that you have to drill the hole in, clamp it to the table of a drill press, and then use the drill press on a high speed to drill into the wood where you're trying to place the hole. That's going to be the most accurate technique, but you might not always have that option. So the next best thing is to make a jig using a drill press. So if you recall, this was the jig that I used to drill the holes for a Sanoa G26 on an airplane I was putting together. And these holes are perfectly straight through the wood. They're all lined up. They're very accurately drilled. And what I was able to do was just clamp this to the firewall of the airplane and then run the drill through these holes and get very accurately drilled holes in the firewall. But you might not have that as an option either. So how do you go about drilling a hole when you have to freehand it using just a hand drill and drill bits like we showed when we started the video? Well, here's what you do. Here's our drilling template, and I actually had to open up the spacing a little bit, so the hole that we're going to drill is actually here. It's not centered in this circle that's drawn there. So there's the hole right there, and what I've done is I've taken my awl and I've made a nice well-defined center mark. Now before I drill, I'm going to clamp a block in place, and I'm just going to put this clamp on here to hold the block, and this is going to keep the wood for my firewall from blowing out when I drill it. And I have to make sure I have room to get the drill in there. So move that out. Okay, so the block is in place. It's backing up the wood. I'm going to chuck my little 1/16 inch drill bit. Make sure we're focused. and I'm going to drill this first hole. Now another thing that contributes to accuracy is whether or not the drill bit is going in perfectly straight. If you drill on an angle, the hole's going to have a tendency to move in that direction. So you want to make sure you hold the drill. What I do is I look down in one direction, then I look across in the other direction to make sure it's 90 degrees to the workpiece, and then I drill. Okay, so that's my first hole. That's a 1/16 inch drill bit. I usually buy a few of those at a time, and I use them for pilot holes. I also use them for drilling 1/16 inch holes. But now, if I were to go right to the 1/4 inch bit, you see how much bigger that bit is than that tiny little pilot hole. So there's no guarantee that pilot hole is going to keep this bit centered. So in fact, if the wood is softer on one side than the other, it's definitely going to move over towards that softer wood, which is bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my assortment of drill bits, and just a little at a time, I'm going to enlarge that hole. And you want to use the fastest drill you have, because speed contributes to a clean hole when you're drilling in wood. Okay, so we see this line right here. The hole is still very well centered on the line. Now if you're doing this and you see the hole's moving off of the spot that you want it, you can attempt to influence where the hole is going by applying a little side pressure as you're drilling the hole. But in this case it looks like it's going pretty straight. So I'm just going to keep going. Okay, still pretty good. Let's see, the next size up. And I don't always do this. Sometimes if I'm just drilling a hole for a fuel line or something, it doesn't have to be as accurate. So I'm not going to do it in 6 or 8 steps like this. But okay, so I'm just checking again, and I have these lines. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see this in the video. Just zooming in, we'll change it around a little more. So the line that we're following is right here and right here. And right now, that hole is staying pretty well centered. Let's get the paper out of the way. Alright, so we've got 2 more to go. This one is just a scotch under. And this last one is actually that last one might have been the 1/4 inch one. Yeah. So that's it. That's our 1/4 inch hole. Let me just do this. Make sure I have the right one here. That's it. So that's our 1/4 inch hole, done in a number of steps. And if you can see this up close, you'll see here's our center line. It's right at the top of the hole. Here's our other line that's lateral across here through the center line. It's also very well centered on that. So that is how you accurately drill holes. Now plywood is going to support the drill bit, and it's going to let you drill a nice clean hole a little better than some of the softer woods. I have a project over there against the wall, and that's a giant scale airplane with balsa sides on the fuselage, and I have to drill holes for the pegs for the wings to line up when you slide them in and you try to mount the wings. So those holes that I have to drill in balsa, I'm not going to try to freehand those, because balsa is very tough, especially when you don't have a super fast drill. So for precision holes in balsa, I wouldn't recommend anything less than this, even if it means you have to freehand the holes through this hardwood maple to make a jig, you know, when you don't have a drill press. But it'll be easier to drill a hole and to make make alignment lines on your block. It'll be easier to drill a hole in the maple and then clamp that to the balsa than it would be to just drill in the balsa in the first place. With balsa wood, especially larger size holes, you almost always run the risk of having the drill bit tear up the balsa around where you're trying to drill the holes. So at the very least, if you're drilling balsa and it has to be really precise, freehand the holes in the piece of hardwood and then clamp that in place if you don't have a drill press to make it jig with, you know, perfect alignment. You can get it pretty close freehand, even if it takes you a few tries to get it just right. All right, so that's it. I hope that helps. Another building skill, get you guys started building airplanes, you know, enjoying giant scale. Bye-bye.